Hello, everybody. I see you. I see you. I'm using a new microphone, so hopefully someone will tell me if you can hear me okay. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Before I get started and the official welcome and start the topic, I am going to share the live link. I hope you all do the same. If this is your first time here, I will do a formal introduction in just a moment. My name is Tiffany Ramm, the host of Adult Sex Education here on TiffTALKTV. I am so happy that you're here. If you would like to take a moment as well to subscribe, that would be greatly appreciated. Like and share as well. That would be great. So I'm going to take a moment since we are live to share the link with other people who don't like to miss these episodes. Then I'll do the formal introduction and get us right into today's topic. Yes, we're back. It's Sunday, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's our typical time that we come back here to talk about adult sex education. So if you would take this moment to go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already and share the live link and we'll get started. In just a moment. Again, if somebody I see you all in the live, a few of you, if you could give me a thumbs up or down if you can hear me okay. This is the first time that I'm using the new Blue Yeti microphone. And so I maybe just gave a free shout out for a product that I don't even know if works right now. But if you could, in the live chat, if you're here and you're signed in, you can live chat me throughout the entire lesson. And at the end, I answer all questions and comments. But if you're in the chat and you can hear me or not hear me, so can you hear me? Let me know. In the live chat, someone give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. I'm going to get ready to share the link and then we can start today's episode. I'm very excited. This is actually something I'm very passionate about. I end up talking about this topic a few times a week. And so I think this will be a good link to just send to people when they have, questions and I don't have a lot of time to talk to them. So yes, this week's topic is near and dear to my heart. And I hope that you all learn something from today's topic. So actually, I just shared the wrong link. I need to share the link to today's live. Let me make sure we're started. There it is. Awesome. Share the right link. There we go. Again, I'm so happy that you're here. Hopefully you all can hear me. All right. Still sharing the link. And then if people have questions and comments, I'll get to that in just a moment and get right into the lesson. I love this part of the show, having live shows. This is like the quirk because I really love sharing the live link with people. Just truggle it along. Truggle again. Yay. Okay. So sounds good. That's good. Everybody, we got sound. And now we can get into the topic in just a moment. I'm sharing the link with a few more people and then we'll have the formal introduction and get us going. I think a lot of people have questions every time I talk about this topic. I always have really fun conversations as a result of this topic. And I think ultimately, if you haven't been here before, if you're new to adult sex education or to TiffTalkTV in general, there's a lot of other content on our platform. Is that it teaches us to ask more questions, to be more curious, and to have more open communication. And ultimately, that's if you don't take anything else away from today, besides maybe vocabulary, you'll take away some tidbits on how to have a conversation about maybe if you think that you might be a non-monogamous person and that if one of these options might be right for you. So let's do that. I think I've shared with everybody that I've been meaning to share with. So getting there. All right. I think I've shared with just about everybody that I normally would share with, and we can get started in the episode. All righty, here we go. So welcome to TiffTALKTV. You are watching Adult Sex Education with me, Tiffany Ramm, also known as TiffTALKTV. Adult Sex Education is a show dedicated to teaching and learning about how to have consensual, healthy, and pleasurable sexual relationships. And my purpose here as the host is not that I'm an expert and know everything, but that I live my life being pretty curious about most things. And if I don't know it, I'm happy to learn it and teach it back to you or share it with you all. So what I like to do typically is get all the way through the material, and then I address any questions or comments at that time. So please blow it up in the live chat. I really love it when you do that. But just know I'm not ignoring you. I give shout outs at the end. And then take questions and answer questions at that time. So let me get through all the material. And then I'm so excited to have kind of like a conversation with whoever is in our live chat this week in regards to this week's topic is non-monogamous relationships. Like I said, this topic is really near and dear to my heart because it usually opens up a lot of cans of worms that the average person is not prepared to talk about, whereas I am. So I'm going to do some myth busting today. I'm going to be sharing some vocabulary today, and I'm going to be sharing some history as well. So again, there's a lot here. If you need to like pause me, if you're watching this on a playback and you want to take some notes, please do. And then also, again, this is about education. If you know you're a monogamous person, nobody's trying to like sway you or convert you by any means. That's not what this show is about. It's just about sharing information. But even if you're a monogamous person, you should be aware that these other styles of relationships exist, and how to have conversation about them in case maybe maybe you're dating and you encounter someone who's really more a non-monogamous person. You know how to navigate those conversations and really identify if someone's a good fit for you or not, and to advocate for yourself either way. Our society pushes monogamy on us quite heavily, religious or otherwise. And so today is not a question of morality. Today is more, again, about communication styles, vocabulary, and history, and really myth busting. If you do have a religious background, just know some of the things I'm going to tell you is going to be contrary to what you've been taught. I'm not challenging your religious beliefs, but I am here to provide education and information. So again, if this comes against your beliefs, I'm not attacking you as a person or your spiritual system. I'm just here to share education and information. So for those of you who are unaware, in this class, the definition of monogamy is having one sexual and or romantic partner at a time. And so that's the definition, having one consenting sexual and romantic partner at a time. That is monogamy, whether it's marriage or not. That is the term that we are going to be using. That's the definition we're using when we're on this show talking about monogamy. Pardon me, I'm not going to survive unless I put on a little bit more gloss. Bear with me, y'all. That would have killed me. So let's do this. So when we're talking about monogamy, that's monogamy. One partner, right? So a lot of people think, well, then non-monogamy, that's just the opposite, multiple, promiscuous. And there's a lot of societal, at least in Western culture, a lot of societal judgment placed on anybody who may not participate in monogamy, as in that definition of only one other consensual sexual and romantic partner. And so today is all about teaching the other options. What are the other definitions and really dynamics of a non-monogamous relationship? So this is where I said, I'm really going to get through the terminology. We need to know. Now, I definitely personally believe in much of fluidity. Much of life is actually a lot more fluid than we give it credit for. But I'm, again, not here to put my beliefs on you or convert anybody to any other lifestyle. But the reason I say that is if you're listening to this and you hear these terms and it does not define you, words are just helpful for us to have communication. If we use the same words to describe the same things, that helps us to communicate. So again, by no means am I saying these are the only options. There's so many other forms of relationship. And here on this show, we just really advocate that things are consensual. So that means you're communicating and everybody's in the know of what's going on. And that these terms just hopefully help maybe empower you to have better conversations if you do find yourself in a non-monogamous relationship. So the first word that describes non-monogamy is polygamy. Most people are comfortable with the word or have heard it before, but to be honest, most of us are using this word incorrectly. Polygamy is most often understood, at least in Western culture, in my experience, as a man having more than one wife. And that's actually not the definition of the word polygamy. Polygamy is the general word used for when a person, any person, has more than one spouse. Okay, so specifically legal and sexual. So we're talking about romantically and sexually having more than one spouse. And that's the definition of polygamy. Now, that definition that most of us know of a man having more than one wife, the word for that is actually polygyny. That's Polygyny. So many of us know that word, the word polygamy, and it's been misunderstood or just misused in culture generally pretty often. Like I've known of polygamy as a concept, but of that word of man having more than one wife. When in reality, when we're talking about that, it's polygyny to specifically indicate man having more than one wife. Now, what most of us have probably never heard of before is polyandry. Polyandry is the practice of a woman having more than one husband. Yes, that's a thing. Like I said, I'm going to get through all the words and then I'm going to come back to some of the history and why some of us feel the way we do about some of these words and why culturally maybe it's been a little bit more taboo. So let's get through the terminology and then I'm going to come back to some other talking points on today's lesson. So again, polygamy is any person having more than one spouse. Polygyny is when a man has more than one wife, and polyandry is when a woman has more than one husband. Another word that's becoming more and more popular or more common that people have been becoming more exposed to, I know myself because I'm in this line of work with relationship and more sexually fluid people, is polyamorous. Now, I want to be very specific in this definition of polyamorous because we're going to get into some other words that are kind of a variation of this or what have you. And so that's where I said it's really important that we be exposed to some of this vocabulary. So when we hear it, we know like, is that me or is that not me? Right? Or do I need to just explain how I work romantically in a different way? If these words maybe limit you or don't best describe you. So polyamorous, and I'm going to read from the definition here just because I know my definition of polyamorous, but I want to make sure we're all on the same page and that I'd be fair to the working practice, which is polyamorous really is the practice or condition of participating simultaneously in more than one serious romantic relationship with the knowledge and consent of all partners. This is my definition as well. So polyamorous means that I practice having more than one sexual and romantic partner, consenting the other parties know at the same time. A lot of people refer to this as casual dating, and I want to make a very, very specific distinction here. Polyamorous can be casual dating, but the very distinct and important part here is that all parties understand and consent. That means when I am casually dating or when I am practicing being polyamorous, that means I'm open with my other partners that yes, in fact, hey, I'm dating other people. I do have sex with other partners. Are you okay with that? And they're like, you know what? Me too. Absolutely. And now we're both consenting to the fact that I have other partners they know I have sex with. What polyamorous is not is when you practice having other partners and those partners are not aware there's other partners. What do I mean? Cheating. Polyamory is not cheating. I have conversations with this on, my other social media platforms all of the time. And that a lot of people be like, oh yeah, I'm polyamorous. And I'm like, are you polyamorous or are you a cheater? Because polyamory and the community of polygamy and polyamory is about consenting. And that's what adult sex education here as a platform is what what we're all about is consensual, pleasurable sexual relationships. And so if you are having sex with other partners and the other partners are not aware, or you're lying about having other partners, you're really a cheater. That's infidelity. Polyamory is about consensual other partners, okay? So again, the practice or conditioning of participating simultaneously, so having multiple sexual or romantic partners that are knowledgeable and consent at the same time. And then this brings us into some other words that I thought was really interesting. And because at first I used to be like, okay, I'm polyamorous. When I'm casually dating, I'm very much polyamorous. I'm very honest when I'm having other partners, make sure I have their consent to do so, that kind of thing. But then there's some other definitions because I'll be honest, in my personal life, friends have joked like, Tiffany, you're going to be a polyandrous woman. Like you're going to have, multiple husbands. And that, let me tell you, would be beautiful. That would be fantastic. I'm not going to lie. That would be wonderful. And we'll get back to that, how there's a history of that and where that history comes from and where the history of polygyny comes from. A lot of our cultures are much more aware of what polygyny is than polyandry, but I'm going to explain to you where polyandry comes from in just a moment. Now, under polyamorous, there's a few other words that maybe you've heard out there, and I will clarify, or that maybe you've experienced this kind of relationship and didn't know there was a word for it. So a lot of us have probably heard of open relationship or, swingers. And typically speaking, especially when you get into like the FetLife communities or BDSM, it's important to understand what people mean when they say this. So typically swingers means when a committed couple or monogamous-ish, when a committed couple, specifically married usually, participate in exchanging, playing, or having sexual activity with other committed or married couples. So swinging typically does indicate some kind of marital relationship status, right? That married couples participating with in sexual activities with other married couples. That's typically what swinging means, or people in a committed relationship participating in sexual acts with other consenting couples. Open relationship is consensually non-monogamous. Again, the definition of open relationship, generally speaking, in the FetLife community or the non-monogamous community, open relationship means consensually non-monogamous. Both partners are saying we are openly non-monogamous. And this is where it's really important to communicate. An open relationship, the definition is very different for every couple. So just because a couple might identify as open does not maybe mean they do some things that you think they do. Typically, non-monogamous couples have very good communication and set boundaries of what their non-monogamy looks like and what their boundaries are for their relationship. And I really encourage that if you're going to be in a non-monogamous relationship, that you do so. Because again, a lot of people are not as familiar with it, even though it's much more common than we talk about. And so to make sure if you're going to be entering into a non-monogamous relationship, you know what the boundaries are if there's already an existing partnership there in place. So again, open means consensually non-monogamous. Swingers is typically when other couples participate in sexual activities with other couples or switching partners of other couples. Then there's two more words that are a little less common, but definitely very important. And I was like, maybe this is me. This word is polyfidelity. Polyfidelity is very similar to like open relationship, but except that it is a closed relationship style that requires sexual and emotional fidelity to an intimate group that is larger than two. This gets a little confusing, but I know a couple like this where it's really just three of them, two wives and a husband. But like the wife shares the other wife. So it's not like the husband just has two separate wives, like they all play together. The third wife they chose together, and they all, like had threesomes together. They all live together. They participate in an economic, commitment all together. So that's polyfidelity, where it is a closed style relationship, just not monogamous, that requires sexual and emotional fidelity to the intimate group that's larger than two. So again, it's not just that it's not necessarily polyandry or polygyny where okay, this one person's like the designated head necessarily, and they can have multiple partners. In this polyfidelity system, it's like there actually is a level of fidelity there, and emotional and romantic and sexual commitment that's made to this group that just happens to be more than one. So that's polyfidelity. And then there's polyaffective relationships, which is emotionally intimate, non-sexual connections among people connected by a polyamorous relationship, such as two heterosexual men who are both in sexual relationship with the same women and have co-spousal or brother-like relationships with each other. That was a lot. So let me break that down. Polyaffective is an emotionally intimate, non-sexual connection among people connected in a polyamorous relationship, such as two heterosexual men who are both in sexual relationships with the same woman and have co-spousal or brother-like relationships with each other. So polyaffective is actually very similar to this definition of polyaffective is actually very similar to polyandry in regards to, like, at this point, and when you do history searches on polyandry, you'll see that typically a lot of polyandry is fraternal, where a woman may marry multiple brothers to preserve basically the heritability and like family wealth and stuff like that. Polyandry was really common in Hindu religions and practices in Asia, where they were really limited on space and land. And so to ensure that like a whole family of brothers would actually inherit any land or property, they would all marry the same woman who maybe had land, and then they would all share under that wife. But again, it's not uncommon. It's a lot more common than people realize. The polyaffective and polyandry and polygyny in some way. So again, but polyaffective means like maybe those multiple male partners are not having a sexual relationship, obviously, with each other, but they're sharing that same woman. And it could go the other way around, except it would really more likely be called just polygyny then. But that you're in a polyamorous relationship, but that these common partners share one specific partner. So again, I see all of you in the chat. I'm going to come to you very, very soon. So just know I want to get through the terminology, the mythbusters, the history, and then I'm going to come answer all your questions. So blow it up in there, put all your questions and comments in there, and then I'll address them at the end. Because again, like I said, this is a very taboo topic, but it's so much more common than people realize. And I think if you have the vocabulary to discuss it, it will make it easier for people to be to have less cheating. And if you really find yourself being a non-monogamous person, and it's less about the impulse or the thrill of cheating, but more about the fact that like you genuinely do feel like you have emotional connection to more than one partner, that this vocabulary would give you the, empowerment to have those conversations and to communicate in a more honest and consensual way. So those are all the terms for today. Again, if you have questions, and you need me to repeat them or spell them because you want to go study them later, let me know in the chat and I'll do that. I might actually just type them in the chat so you guys can see them. In the future, of course, like I'll pop them up on the side and stuff because eventually I'll do less frequent lives and do more pre-recorded just so you guys can have like the resources and the pop-ups and all that fun jazz. Yay. But the number one argument I get when discussing with people non-monogamous relationships is one, morality. I'm not here to fight morality with you. If you have a certain specific belief that tells you can or cannot be non-monogamous, that monogamy is the only way, I'm not going to fight you on that. That's your prerogative. That's your religion. That's your practice. Do you, right? So if that's your belief in your practice, that's fine. Just know people have different beliefs and practices that may not be the same as your own. So with that being said, the second argument I always get is that it's unnatural that humans were monogamous. Well, sorry to bust your bubble, but science says otherwise. And I know a lot of you are going to be like, what? No. My general personal disclaimer here is that I genuinely feel that humans have a choice, that we can be monogamous or non-monogamous. And that here on Adult Sex Education, we just really, really push communication and consent as part of having healthy and pleasurable sexual relationships. So if you are going to be in a non-monogamous arrangement or relationship, again, the key is consent, to make sure you're communicating that with your partners and they consent to that being the case. But in regards to science actually says that humans are polygamous and that most mammals are polygamous. And, our closest primate brothers and sisters in the animal kingdom are in fact apes and chimpanzees who are not monogamous. And to be honest, most mammals are not. Only about 3 to 9% of mammals that give, birth to live babies, humans are mammals, are actually monogamous. Most mammals are polygamous, and science has demonstrated that of the species that are monogamous, they typically tend to have smaller testes, and it's a result of having less competition for like basically lower sperm count, smaller testes, lower sperm count, and less sexual competition. And so, yeah, a lot of people argue that, polygamy is a demonstration of misogyny, and I don't agree with that. I definitely know plenty of polygyny practicing men that are not misogynist and that are very just loving to their wives, and that, make sure to provide for all their wives based on their own religious or non-religious practices. So, again, when it comes to science, when it comes to nature, humans actually are polygamous. And one thing to keep in mind that I thought was curious in the science was that when I asked, are chimps and apes monogamous? And science said, well, not at all. They're quite promiscuous. Male chimpanzees compete for females and copulate with as many as possible, whereas also female chimpanzees copulate with multiple males, not only to conceive young, but also as sexual favors that's repaid by more favorable treatment from males, such as food sharing and protection. So I basically commute this as essentially like, prostitution and or just, how a wife may like zhuzh the husband to get like that ring she wants or like, the nicer house or whatever. That essentially like women in female mammals have realized they can use sex and sexual acts as a way to judge the males. And so that the female chimpanzees have realized if they do sexual favors, because chimpanzees and apes are actually, other mammals that we realize do masturbate and do like, oral copulation as well as hand copulation. So, they're not just having sex with the male chimpanzees, but maybe oral or hand copulation. And so stimulation. And so the female chimpanzees realize that if they do sexual acts for the male chimpanzees are nicer to them and give them more food and whatnot and are less temperamental. Go figure. Again, and that they'll do that with more than one partner to make, the tribe, the group, the community better, nicer, more pleasurable to be in. And so, yeah, like I said, mammals in general, only about 3 to 6% of them are actually monogamous. It's actually a lot, again, and when it comes to mammals, scientifically speaking, it encourages competition, healthy competition, to be polygamous. And so when it comes to the animal kingdom, it would look and seem that humans are actually more naturally polygamous. And here we just want to really encourage, consent and practicing safe and healthy sexual relationships, and that it's more likely to be pleasurable for you if it is consensual and you communicate your needs and your boundaries with your partner. So that's what I would say. There are so many definitions. If you want me to repeat one, let me know. But I'm going to go through the comments because, yeah, I see the chat really blowing up, and I want to address everybody's questions as best I can. And I'll use my life examples when I can, or other people's examples, former clients and whatnot, to kind of help guide you all. Okay, so let me just start up the top. I see you. I think I see Silent JMR. I see you. Thank you for your compliment. A hot wife is the way. Maybe having a hot wife is the way. I would agree. If I could have a hot wife, that would be great, So we'll see what the creator has in mind for me. I don't know. My relationship status. One thing I will say is very rarely will I ever, if ever, address my relationship status online. So I'm going to very nicely decline to answer that question live. I live my life transparently and authentically, but just out of the respect for my partner or partners at any given time. I usually don't advertise my relationship, my current relationship. I usually talk about past relationships or previous experiences. So I will not answer that current question, but feel free to keep asking it. Maybe one day I'll just let you know. Silent JMR, I think you asked a question in regards to, is that what I do? Or am I just using that as an example? I have never been in a polyandrous relationship. I've never been married to more than one man at a time. And obviously I'm not a man, so I've never been polygynous. I've never participated in polygyny, where a man has more than one wife. I have practiced polyamory, the act of having other romantic and sexual partners, and they consensually know about that. And I'm not closed to the idea of polyfidelity. I personally do, really believe in a lot of sexual fluidity and communicating with your partner. And so does monogamous fidelity, is that what I require in my relationships? No, I don't require that as part of my relationships. Does it happen sometimes? Absolutely. And if that's what my partner needs, depending on that relationship, depends on if I agree to that or not. So that's why I said I feel really comfortable having this conversation with you all in an educational manner and giving you the terms to communicate the boundaries and your needs. If you are a monogamous person and you need monogamous fidelity as a way to express your love and the boundaries that you require, that's okay. And just make sure you communicate that to your partner. Like I do require, monogamy and fidelity. And if you can't do that, then you probably need to find another partner. And that's okay. There's a lot of humans who either socially were socialized to be monogamous or where that's just their natural way. I believe that, and that's fine. But just know there are people who are, poly, and that, just so we're all aware, you can completely love more than one person romantically at one time. It's definitely possible. I have, and because we were socialized a certain way, I really struggled with that. But now, because I know terminology and I know history and facts, I was definitely empowered to have healthier conversations about that. So for those of you who are curious, is it natural? It's against my religion, whatever. Well, polyandry actually goes back over 7,000 years. It's practiced by indigenous cultures in Nigeria, in Kenya, all across Africa. Again, it wasn't just men practicing polygyny and having multiple wives, but the idea that having multiple spouses allowed you to accumulate wealth and have larger families and maintain wealth within that family heritage and lineage. And so, if that woman had a lot of land, and depending on the practices of that tribe or that community, marrying that woman actually benefited your family because you now have access to that woman's wealth. And it didn't matter if she had multiple husbands or not. And in a lot of practices, polygyny and polyandry was a way to expand your wealth, right? So when you married someone, you usually didn't just gain the spouse, you gained their entire family. So if you owned a large farm or you were accumulating a lot of land and you needed someone to work your farm, practicing polygyny or polyandry was the number one way to get free labor, because you didn't just gain a spouse, you gained all their family members. So, their brothers and sisters and their parents. And so now instead of just one added member to your family, you may have added somewhere between 4, 6, 8, 10 people to your work hands, to your land. And so that's where the cultural practice came. It was very common in certain specific tribes, again, in Nigeria and Kenya and different countries throughout Africa for polyandry. It's not uncommon. And also in the Hindu practices, many Asian cultures practice polyandry, and it's actually not illegal to this day. It wasn't outlawed in a lot of Hindu practices in countries. That polyandry is actually still allowed in many of the countries. Just so we're all clear, though, legally speaking, in the United States, polygamy in any form, having multiple spouses, is illegal. So you could practice polyamorous versions of relationships, open, consensual, multiple partner relationships, but just know, legally speaking, only one of those people will be recognized by the government as being heritable, to inherit property, land, wealth, those kinds of things. And so that's where having a will, writing things out is really important if you're going to have those kinds of families and dynamics. And I have coached a few couples through that. Okay, well, maybe you did legally marry your first spouse, but then you took on 3 other wives or husbands. If you want them to be entitled to anything legally, you really do need to make sure you put that in writing and you have a legal document reflecting that. And that it's probably in your best interest not to call them a spouse, because again, polygamy is against the law in the United States. So to just state like this close family friend is entitled to 25% of all my property or blah, 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 right? So, and honestly, the only reason it's illegal is the heritage or the history behind that was colonial whites didn't want certain people to have the heritability. You could really, grow wealth that way. And so to keep wealth limited to only one spouse, limited certain populations and cultures and people to expand their wealth. So really, it wasn't a moral thing. And also Christianity really was like pro-monogamy. So it was really part of the WAS, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, that like really made sure to drive home that monogamy was the only way, and legally speaking, the only way to inherit wealth was through one spouse. And so there's that. So I'm not attacking anybody's religion. Again, a lot of people know in Islam, it says you can have up to 4 wives so long as you can provide for them fully and equally. But again, I'm not here to challenge anybody's moral beliefs, but this is just the history and the facts that, scientifically speaking, we're actually really more polygamous creatures. We're very communal, promiscuous, if you would, creatures as mammals. And that, being polygamous actually encourages higher sperm counts, larger and more active testes, that kind of thing. So let's see. Want to see any other comments? Want to make sure I address all your questions. Let's see. Jealousy in non-monogamous relationships. I imagine so, absolutely. And historically speaking, non-monogamous relationships happen for many reasons. A lot of the times, non-monogamous polygyny, specifically a man having multiple wives, actually had nothing to do with the love for the individual. Is very much a wealth building, seed planting, family growing operation. Again, for a lot of people, having multiple wives meant multiple children, which meant free labor on their farms. And for every wife they added, this is like African culture and history to a lot of indigenous tribal practices back historically, was that when you married a wife, part of the dowry was that the family would give you land. And so part of that process, like every wife you took, you were expanding your land. With that wife, you also inherited the family, and they would work the farm for you. So honestly, it was a huge part of ego and wealth growing, was to have multiple wives. And now it's a community raising all of your children and growing your farm. And by having a farm, you could bring in profit to the family as well as provide for your own family. So I imagine that that jealousy definitely did happen between the wives. Looking at more specifically polyandry, which is a woman having multiple husbands, it actually sounds like polyandry worked out a lot better, was a little more cohesive because it was fraternal, and typically the brothers agreed to marrying the same wife because that wife had a lot of wealth. And it also, in a lot of African cultures, the polygyny, a man having multiple wives, looked a little more consensual in regards to the first wife was always designated kind of like the manager, and usually was like the marriage that was first for love or out of choice for both parties. And that the first wife was designated the manager of the other wives. So the first wife would, designate who would do what chores, who would have access to the husband on different days, that kind of thing. So the first wife was always revered as like kind of the boss of the household or of the family. And that's kind of how things were managed if you do like a lot of research. But ultimately also, of course, in any of the polygynous, males having multiple female, having wives, there's a lot of history of, there's misogyny there, that there's a lot of marrying out of like ego and stuff like that. Even if you go back to biblical texts or other like religions, it wasn't even that these men were having sex with all their wives. It was just a way to either create community or to conquer. There's, I think it actually was Mordecai actually would just once a year marry a woman from a different part of the country to unite the different like the different neighborhoods. So essentially it would be just like, the governor of California, like taking a wife from each one of a different county every year as a way to like create unity. Because now like the governor, is like, now I'm part of this county and I'm part of this county and I'm part of this county because you took a wife from each one of those communities. So polygyny and polyandry is definitely practiced in different ways throughout history. But it did look like that when wives had multiple husbands, it was definitely way more communal and shared resources and access and that kind of thing, which was really interesting as I did the research. But yeah, I imagine jealousy definitely does happen, especially if the first wife, is considered the boss and I could see that being hard if you're the second or third wife and you're like, yeah, maybe I have, equal, but I'm not the boss. I think that could maybe irk you a little bit. But that's why I said it's very important nowadays when you do have a choice, if you're in a culture like ours, that you have a choice, that it's consensual. If you're a person who requires monogamous fidelity, please don't submit to that just because you want to feel wanted or you want a lover. If your lover or your partner tells you they're actually, polyamorous and they want multiple partners, you don't have to consent to that. If you really know that's against what you need and your wants and your desires, I would say, just tell them like, oop, that's not for me, and move on to somebody who can or does also want, monogamous fidelity. Let's see. We are sexual creatures. So it's really interesting, Silent, that you said you think it seems like males are the only ones that have to compete. So in nature, if you look at nature, I love having this conversation because I'm so anti-girls having to look cute for boys. I don't know what humans did, what kind of misogynistic craziness happened over the last, 2,000 to 5,000 years. But in the animal kingdom, if you're just breaking it down to primates and like what the science and nature does say, men are to compete for women. In regards to, if you look at a peacock, the male peacock is the one with the feathers and he does like a dance and like has to like woo. He has to like, subdue and attract the woman. And the woman is usually plain brown, dull looking color. Like, cause who does she have to impress? Nobody. She's like, you're trying to get me, friend. And usually it's not a physical appearance that the woman has to exude, right? It's usually a pheromone, her essence, and that she's in heat. She's ready to procreate, right? She's in heat, she's fertile, she's ovulating, she's ready for copulation. And men can sense that. So in nature, the dynamic is that the male uses his physical attraction and attitude and exerts himself, attracts the woman in some way. And how the man knows the woman is someone he wants is because of her essence, her pheromone, right? So in nature, it's so much more about the woman's pheromone, her essence, her presence, how she conducts herself than her appearance. Most all mammals are this way. Lions, who has the mane and who roars and who makes a big, huge, to-do, like, pay attention to me. I'm a great provider. Ha, 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 ha. I'm the leader of the pack, right? Who is that? The male, not the female. The female's just like, yeah, I'm a hunter. I provide. I'm a mom. I can do this. But what you bring to the table, why you the boss, right? And he's like, rah, because I got big hair and look at me, right? Like, and he has to subdue the woman. If you've ever watched like cats, big cats or domestic animal home cats mate, it looks like rape to me. I'm not gonna lie. It'd be a whole, it doesn't look fun. But when it comes to our closest primate, chimpanzees and apes and stuff like that, what happens? The gorilla, the silverback, he has to be big and strong. Well, he's 900 pounds of pure muscle. And he got to, show himself, puff up. The girls be looking like, him again. Oh, he ready? I guess, like, you the big one. Yeah, let's do it. Fine. Right? Like, and like I said, even the women, when it comes to chimpanzees, she's like, okay, I don't really like you, but like, I want you to be nice to me and give me more food. So like, let me just, do this real quick. Like, in nature, the men are there to impress the women. It is. And the women take multiple partners. Again, that's just nature, right? When she's ready, if the man's ready and she's like, oh, fine, I'll take it. Then she does. So in nature, for the most part, mammals, our closest relatives and how we produce young and, whatever, gestation and all of that, is that, we The men are there to compete for and impress the woman. Really, humans are the only mammals and primates where somehow we've convinced otherwise, that women are there to impress men. I'm not about that. I'm here to like me, but y'all do you. But in the event, the competition part is, in other cultures, very much understood that human nature is communal, and that even less so as a competition for mating, that it has been an economic and resource thing, like who has more food, who has more land, who can, provide an overall better family experience. Because again, in some of these cultures that practice polyandry, you didn't just get the husband, or polygyny, you didn't just get the wife, you got the husband plus all of his brothers, plus all the brothers and sisters and the grandparents, their parents, like everybody came with them. And so it was a sense of community and growing assets to your household. So in those days, actually, there was periods of time in African ancestry in a lot of countries throughout Africa and indigenous ancestry, that monogamy was actually considered like dumb. It was like, why would you only have one wife? What? Like, don't you want many kids? Don't you want to show you're virile? Don't you want to show you can provide for many? Like, where it was like, really polygamy didn't start to be shunned on in Africa until they were colonized. And that monogamy was actually a symbol of colonization, not to freak anybody out. But yeah, so just so everybody's aware. Let me see what any other questions and comments are. Seems like the males are only there ones to have to compete. Again, it's just a different competition. Again, women, when it comes to nature, typically are only in competition to attract a man when she is ready to ovulate or when she's in heat. Female cats, they'll kind of like do I call it her slutty cry. Like, oh, when their girl cats are outside my place are in heat, they'd be so annoying. Talking about like the hoe cry. That's what I call it. She's like, I'm ready. Who's out there? So she's not trying to present anything other than I'm ready. Right. But it's up to the men then who approach her. Because I've watched this. If you watch it, the women will announce like, I'm ready. But then that's when the competition starts. Like, hey, now that these three men have presented themselves, what makes you be the one that I want to do? Right. And this is what I feel like. That's how I conduct myself. I'm the prize. I bring a lot to the table besides just sex. Right. And so why you, man? Why you, out of all the men pursuing me? Why you? Why would I pick you? And in my case, why you versus all the men and women pursuing me? I'm because, I identify differently. So why? And so that's where the competition comes in. I know I'm great. I know what I bring to the table. So what do you bring to the table? But yeah, and at this point in our society, the competition is really both ways. The question or statement here is from Battle Rifle, and it's asking or stating polyamory works good now. It depends on high value the guy is. Again, I think your statement is assuming that. Well, I don't know if maybe I'm just not reading your statement right. Polyamory works if there's consenting parties. Again, I think your comment's implying that the man is the only one having more partners. And this is where I ask people really where they're at in their boundaries and if they're communicating. Me, I can do one-sided monogamy. That's what I call it, where only one of us is having multiple partners. That's what I found men really want in our society. They really want that they're able to have multiple female partners, but they want to require fidelity from the females. Now, do I believe this is slightly misogynistic? Absolutely. But I've participated in that structure before consensually. I've consented to the one-sided monogamy, which is only one partner is allowed to have multiple partners. I prefer to have a version of polyamory where we both, all partners are allowed to have other partners consensually, and that we're aware of that agreement. So my thing is, again, consensual. Any of these non-monogamous relationship types work when you're communicating what your boundaries and expectations are, and it's consensual. Now, actually, all of that I just said also applies to a healthy, functional, monogamous relationship. Again, cheating happens all the time because someone said they were being monogamous and they weren't. And that's why consent to me is so important. A lot of you, a lot of people are out here just telling people what they want to hear. Like, yeah, I'm faithful to you. You're the only one. Now, the reason why I will never encourage that, I've cheated before and it tore me apart on the inside morally. It was not reflective of who I was as a person. And I ultimately learned so much from that experience, which is why I will not do that ever again. I learned a lot from being the cheater, which was that if I do happen to catch feelings for another person or want to be sexually involved with another person, that I owe it to my partner to just communicate that. And, and let people know that up front. Like, I'm the kind of person who can love and like and want to have sex with more than one person. And that doesn't take away my love or respect or sexual attraction to you. And that be consensual. It's the cheating and the lying that typically hurts people the most. And that's what we don't encourage here at Adult Sex Education. We want you to have pleasurable, consensual, and healthy relationships. Also, cheating typically leads to other high-risk behaviors. Typically is how you attract sexually transmitted infections. If you're having sex with multiple partners and your other partners don't know, you are putting them at risk. They are now at risk and do not know the risk and therefore may not be taking precautions. They might be having sex with you unprotected when maybe if they knew there was other people, they probably would not. They're at high risk to contract a sexually transmitted infection they don't know, so they're not getting tested as frequently as they probably should. Stuff like that. So just know if you are having sexual relationships with multiple people and they don't know, you are putting yourself and them at risk. And that's not cool. So we don't advocate for that here at Adult Sex Education. So please, if you're finding yourself being a person who needs multiple partners, just start practicing consensual multiple partner relationships. I'm going to leave some space here in case you have any other questions or comments. Like I said, we went over a lot of, information. We went over a lot of terms today, history. Like I said, non-monogamous relationships are actually very common. They date back over 7,000 years to, Egyptian, Nigerian, Kenyan, different tribal practices. Like I said, honestly, a lot of cultures were non-monogamous prior to, being colonized. So just know that. Yeah, there's that. But a few of you have asked, if I'm in a relationship or if I practice these styles of relationships, and basically the answer is I have practiced, versions of polyamory and different poly relationships. I prefer to communicate with my partner or partners that, I'm very aware of my energy, that people are attracted to me, I'm attracted to them. But I also want to be respectful to my partner or partners in regards to, if they require monogamy or monogamous fidelity, are we at a point in a relationship where I can do that? And sometimes I'm not. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. So if you need that, we probably need to not deal with each other, and that's how that goes. So when I've had to coach clients on that, they're like, but she'll leave me if I tell her. Well, she's going to leave you if you don't tell her and she finds out, or him, women. It's like, well, I have, 2-3 guys that I'm seeing. Well, do they know that you're seeing 2-3 other guys? That's really putting them at risk. And they do actually genuinely have a right to know. And I'll say that legitimately here at Adult Sex Education. A lot of people, our culture has really become this whole, like, it's my business. Well, when it includes multiple sexual partners and you're and possibly endangering or raising people's risks of infections, people have a right to know. People really do have a right to know it's not just your business. If you are, possibly, increasing their risk of, contracting infections and sexually transmitted infections and stuff like that, people have a right to know. They do have a right to know if you're sleeping with other people, because who you sleep with affects them and increase their risk. So they do have a right to know. Let me see what I think a new question just came in. Let me look at it. Thank you, Henry. The number one question that's related to this is, how do you bring up to your partner that you want this type of relationship? How do you communicate that? So there's two ways to actually answer this question, Henry. One is right away. Like when I am casually dating, well, actually in general now, because I'm very much a poly advocate. I'm a poly lifestyle advocate. Even in the times that I am monogamous or monogamous-ish, I'm still very much a poly advocate. So the best way to start is if you're a poly person or you want to practice some kind of poly lifestyle, you just tell tell people up front. I have a male friend who practices this as well. He has 3 wives. Like in the US, we can't have multiple wives, but he designates them wives. He has 3 wives and he's looking for more. and But he tells women when he meets them and he dates them or takes them on a date, he says, I have 3 other wives. I'm a polyamorous person. And that, this is who I am, like you will know there's other people. You're happy to, I welcome you to know the other wives. We can vacation together, whatever. So having that conversation, letting people know like you're a polyamorous person, what that means. Again, setting the boundary. If you're a male or female and you want to be what I call like one-sided monogamy, like maybe you want multiple partners, but you want them to be monogamous, you have to be honest about that. I know a lot of men who are like this. It becomes like an ego thing. Like they want multiple female partners, but they don't want their female partners having other partners. You need to communicate that expectation up front so they know what they're getting into. And likewise, if you're a woman and you're like, I want to have a bunch of dudes, but I don't want you having a bunch of ladies, you have to say that. And sooner rather than later. Again, this is definitely, people are like, that's so taboo. Why would you talk about that on the first date? Because for a lot of people, that's a deal breaker and you should probably just not waste each other's time. And because you're not invested in each other at that time, there's no reason to withhold or delay or lie, right? Because there's no investment. It's much harder to bring this up. Maybe if you've been dating for 2 years and then you're like, oops, I accidentally kind of met someone and I kind of like think I have feelings and oops, now I kind of want to have sex with them. Now what do I do? So that brings us to the second time. What if you didn't bring it up at the first date? What if you are already fully head on into a relationship that maybe otherwise was monogamous and now you want to bring up a partner? I got your back, friends. So my policy in life and relationships, as I tell people, like I'm a very honest person. I live transparently and authentically because, well, I have trauma brain. I have a trash memory. It's very unreliable. I write everything down because I forget everything. But because of this, I try not to lie because I will forget the lie and I will get caught up tomorrow. So I try not to lie, but I do reserve the right to change my mind. So maybe we did start this relationship being committed in a monogamous relationship, but now, you know what? I've been spending a lot of time with this coworker and I feel kind of feelings and I really want to kiss him or I'm not going to lie. I want to have sex with them and I think they want to have sex with me too. It happens. Life is life. And we are, at the end of the day, we are animals. We are primates and pheromones be pheromones. Okay. So that happens versus cheating and just trying to hide it or, doing it. People are like, it's better to ask forgiveness than permission. No, infidelity will cause sometimes some very unfixable brokenness in people. And you might destroy a relationship that maybe didn't need to be destroyed. So my recommendation is this. If you are in a monogamous relationship, but you're like, yeah, maybe that poly thing you're talking about, that might be what I'm about. Tell that to your partner. You know what? It's not that I want to cheat on you or that I don't love you or that your sex is not pleasurable, but I think that I'm acquiring feelings for somebody else or that I might want to have more than one partner. Like things have just changed. I'm a different person and you're enough, but I want more. Right. And that starts the relationship or starts the conversation. I'm going to be honest with you. More often than not, it's going to be uncomfortable because you've never had this kind of conversation before. And you literally probably have no idea what your partner's going to say. What I will say is please do not skip this conversation. So many of you are out there assuming your partner is not into it. And you would be damn surprised, okay? There's a lot more people, especially women. Men are out there like, oh, my girl would never go for that. She's so jealous. You would be surprised, friend. You would be surprised, okay? There's so many women I talk to who are actually like, Tiffany, I could get down for that, actually, if we were just honest and set some kind of boundaries. And there's so many more people out here, male and female, that you would be surprised are like, we all share one house. We split bills, we vacation, community. Okay. Or what about this? Maybe your partner doesn't want to have kids, but you do, but they don't want to break up with you. But maybe the person you're having feelings for does want kids. Have that conversation. Okay. Now we bring in a third partner to the whole family. and that person has the kid. There's so many conversations. There's so many types of lifestyles being lived out there that you didn't know. More than likely, you're not the first one. This isn't the first time this lifestyle's been dabbled in, okay? So have the conversation, pull off the Band-Aid, just do it. I do it. I like I said, I did it. I lived a monogamous marriage and I were monogamous-ish. Clearly my ex-husband was being unfaithful, but if you know anything about my story, and that's kind of where like my dabble in this was so confusing. I was like, wait, I had 2 guys and I was cheating and I left him for you to commit to what you pressured me into, a monogamous relationship, only to find out you were cheating. That is some dumb stuff. Right. So I was like, going forward, there's got to be a better way. So when I really like with myself and how I maneuver and what's important to me, poly lifestyles just really work best for me in my moments of self-discovery. But also because of my recovery, if you know anything about my story, then sometimes I had to put poly lifestyle on pause and be like, listen, no, or just be celibate for a little second or whatever. So I'm very in tune with my own personal needs and boundaries and communicating with partners. None of us are perfect, of course, but the idea here is that we want to encourage you to have safe, consensual, pleasurable sexual relationships. I think I have one more. Nope, I get your questions and comments. So yeah, so this was lovely. We're at our hour. I did not expect this to take an hour, but you guys did have good questions and comments. If you have any further questions, comments, please let me know now. I am trying to wrap this up and keep these an hour or less. So I'm gonna give you a few more moments. If you have any questions, I'll answer them now. Otherwise, please subscribe if you haven't already. Join the squad, the TiffTALKTV squad. Like and share, please, especially this one. Oh my goodness. I know so many of you are like, how do we have this conversation? If you're in a monogamous or monogamous-ish relationship right now, but you're like, I think poly is more for me, a nice way to start this conversation is share the link to this show with whoever you want to have that conversation with and be like, hey, this was an interesting episode. Watch this and let me know what you think. There's the conversation starter. And then if they watch it and they're like, oh, hell no, what's she talking about? And you'd be like, okay, Gage. And then maybe share with them then like, oh, really? Because I was kind of thinking that I can relate to that, right? Like use that as your segue. And then maybe they'd be like, wait, what? Really? Why? What do you mean? And then have that conversation. You never know until you put it out there. Do not think and assume you know your partners that much. All of us are like, no, I know my partner. They would never go for it. Again, you'd be surprised. In my coaching with couples, you know, one will be like, well, I kind of want to have a threesome, but I don't know if they'll be into it. And I'd be like, okay, well, let's ask. Have you ever asked? No. Okay, well, ask. You know, you don't know until you ask. But threesomes is a whole nother conversation. We'll probably have a separate episode about threesomes and how to engage in that conversation. Because there's a lot of shenaniganry that goes around threesomes that I think in regards to adult sex education, in regards to consensual, healthy, pleasurable, we got to be careful about how and why, the intention, the purpose behind multiple partner activity. Again, some of you are borderlining on like sexual addiction, behavior, impulsivity, stuff like that. And so, again, I'm here to encourage healthy, consensual, pleasurable relationships, but at no point do I want people to be having, you know, impulsive issues, productivity issues, addictive issues when it comes to sexual relationships. So if you do think that you're having sexual issues in regards to impulsivity, maybe you might have an addiction to sex, masturbation, pornography, please seek help. It's one of the things that I specialize in. Feel free to send me a message. You can follow me on all social media platforms at TiffTALKTV, TiffTALKTV. Otherwise, I don't see any other comments. So I think this is a great place to end for tonight. Please, like I said, subscribe, like, and share. And then join me next week for another episode of Adult Sex Education.